So our next presenter is Lee Mathers. Lee has a background in law, and he says with a mother who still can't understand why he never became a lawyer. He's worked in and built startups for over 15 years, addicted to the teachings of Seth Godin, and consequently having a keen interest in exploring life and businesses. He brings new ideas and new ways of creating digital transformation. So we'll start, this is a pre-record, so we'll start that right now.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the Australian Library and Information Association for having me along today. My name's Lee Mathers. I'm from a Brisbane-based company called TalkVia, and I suppose the topic that we're talking about today and the topic that I've been invited along to talk about is very close to my heart and certainly very close to TalkVia's heart because it's something that we live and breathe every day. So for us, digital transformation is not just a catchphrase. It's something that we're right in the thick of. We're in the weeds of digital transformation, dealing with, I suppose, our clients and the people that we come across about how to help their organizations embrace new technology and embrace everything that's possible with new technology. So it's one of those things, I suppose, that we've been living with for the last couple of decades. And this move towards embracing technology and how we can actually make it improve people's lives and how we can really sort of change the way that we do things. And so one of the spaces that we work in and that TalkFire is been heavily involved in over the last couple of years is what we call interactive voice experiences. And we call it the voice revolution. And it's really about using our voice in order to be able to interact with businesses, interact with enterprises and organizations, and get access to a whole heap of information, but do that in a way that's very conversational and that uses natural language. So really what that means is that we build voice apps. If we wanted to distill it down to its bare essentials, everybody originally built their website and then they went and built their mobile app. And now the next channel, the next way to engage with people and engage with customers and engage with organizations is through these interactive voice experiences. And so these experiences work on different platforms. So whether that's Google Assistant or Amazon Alexa, or whether it's chatbots on your website, it's all about creating this conversational experience in being able to impart information to users of your organization or of your platform, and creating this, I suppose, ongoing conversation with the community at large. So we essentially build these conversational AI high fidelity experiences, and it uses natural language to be able to interact with a computer. So instead of just an input and an output, the idea is ultimately you should be able to have a conversation, and you're having effectively a conversation with some artificial intelligence that you've programmed in order to be able to deliver back that information and that context and that data. The really, I suppose, transformational part about that is that now we understand exactly what's been asked and how it's been asked. We can understand emotion, we can understand context. So we build these interactive voice experiences for large and small businesses, for enterprises, for governments and public organizations all around the world. And we deliver them to their customers or users wherever they happen to be. Now, the reason we do that and the reason this is such an exciting area to be in at the moment is just because how much these experiences and these platforms have exploded. So pretty much anybody that has a mobile device in their pocket these days has access to conversational AI and has access to a digital assistant. So whether that's Siri or Google Assistant or Alexa, and there's now 8 billion devices, and there's this figure's sort of growing all the time, but there's 8 billion devices in the world that you can interact with your voice in order to be able to have a conversation. So that may be your Samsung TV that hangs on the wall, or it may be the Apple HomePod, or it may be Apple CarPlay in your car. But the idea is that you should be able to have a conversation and not just get back implicit content, which is content that the platforms themselves are serving up. So that's Google sort of telling you the weather or bus timetables, or playing a Spotify song or adding to a shopping list. but you should also be able to connect with organisations and brands. So one of the things that we've built for the State Library of Queensland, and it's thanks to them that we're here today, is the ability to be able to ask questions of the State Library and certainly of content that they control. So that's an explicit invocation, an explicit conversation that you're actually having with a brand and that or an organization, and that organization is entirely controlling the interaction with the end user. It's not relying on data that's just being pulled by the platforms into these speakers and digital assistants in order to be able to have a conversation. So I joked there sort of about Bixby. Bixby's obviously Samsung's digital assistant. They've still spent a couple of $1 billion on it. It's just the fact that nobody uses it. Obviously, the biggest platforms in Australia are Google and Alexa, and then Apple Siri. And we have the ability to be able to build these bespoke conversations on each of these platforms in order to be able to have a conversation with users wherever they are. The problem with this, and the problem with this sort of digital transformation in this particular space, is it's actually ridiculously difficult to get involved with. And there's a really high, I suppose, learning curve and steep learning curve to actually understanding how this works. And it's similar to sort of when people are trying to build websites in the early days. And the reason that is that you can build natively on the platform. So you can build natively on Alexa or natively on Google, but even then it's a bespoke experience each time. So one of the things that we do is we've created a platform that allows that conversation to be able to be created once and deployed everywhere. So every time we talk about this stuff initially, it's all educational. The first conversation we always have is, what is this stuff and where does it work, and what's the use case? How can we actually use it? So we spend a lot of time actually now designing conversations and understanding what people are going to be asking of a particular organization or brand, and then how the AI should respond to that and how that should actually feel like it's a natural language conversation. But the platform we've built to actually do all of that is called TalkFire. And named after our company, obviously, or our company is named after our platform. And what it allows you to do is essentially create this individual conversation in this one place, and then deploy it wherever your customers are, whether it's as a chat bot or whether it's sort of a Facebook Messenger bot or a WhatsApp chat, or onto these platforms. So whether it's sort of Google or Alexa and these speakers and wherever they actually may be. So in terms of the projects that we've been involved with, we've done a lot of work with the State Library of Queensland. We've done a lot of work with other Queensland-based companies. So one of them, for example, is RACQ. So imagine you're driving along and you're running out of fuel. You actually want to find what a fair price for fuel is, or the cheapest price for fuel. But you obviously don't want to take your hands off the wheel in order to be able to pick up your phone and find where that cheapest fuel is. So what we built for RACQ is, hey, Google, talk to RACQ.
Hi, welcome back to the RACQ voice app. Cooper here. I can get you the current cheapest fuel prices, road conditions, and answers to many of our most commonly asked questions. Which would you like?
Find the cheapest unleaded fuel in Fortitude Valley. It's nothing like a live demo.
Just looking that up.
So we're actually querying a live API here.
The cheapest unleaded is $1.53 per litre. At Caltex Lutwyche, would you like to hear the address, have the address sent to your phone, or to find prices in a different area?
No, that's everything. Thanks, Google. So that's one of the things that we've built for RACQ. But then we've also built stuff for Southern Cross Austereo so that it actually, it uses voice over rather than voice to text. So that's using the synthetic voice. The RACQ app is using the synthetic voice. And then we've also built stuff for State Library. So interacting with their Anzac Memorial in Brisbane and being able to hear some of the stories and letters and State Library curates, but then doing a whole heap of sound design so that that becomes a really pleasant experience. So we do a lot of work for public organizations, but we've done a lot of work directly with large corporates as well. And it's about understanding what the use case is and how you can actually, I suppose, build little experiments to see how this stuff can actually help transform interactions with your organization. So for us, one of the big things that we do is we step through different proofs of concept rather than just launching into a big build, because as much as all of this technology is fantastic, if it doesn't land right, then you can get a long way down a project without actually sort of getting the results that you're hoping for. So we do a lot of small builds, a lot of proof of concepts to actually make sure that there is a use case there, because often when we're speaking to potential customers and clients, we've got some great ideas, but it's actually I suppose the ideas and how our clients are interacting with their customers that help shape what these conversations can end up doing. So it's not necessarily also front of house. We do a lot of back of house efficiency type work as well to help improve interactions within an organization that doesn't necessarily need to be client or customer focused. So that's a quick little overview of what TalkFire does, and I suppose the digital transformation that we are involved with at the grassroots level, right down in the weeds, and that we sort of build on a daily basis. Thank you very much for your time, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee and Justin. Those have been really, really stimulating presentations. We've got a couple of questions. Don't hesitate to put things into the chat so that we can grill our panel with different ideas. The first question I think is probably mainly for Justin, but I'd be really interested in Lee in your comments. So we've had someone post a question that says, we have basically wonderful collections sitting in libraries, archives, galleries and museums, and we want to make them discoverable, particularly audio and video collections that may be unsung treasures. Justin, you've talked a little bit about the automatic generation of metadata to make things more discoverable. Are there other issues that you think are really important for us to think about in making collections discoverable, particularly if they're non-English language materials?
That's a really good question, and I know State Library of New South Wales have done a lot of work in that area, specifically with their oral histories to text, as well as some of the stuff they're doing now with their TechScreen, their documents to text as well. So when it comes from other languages, that does make it a bit harder, but one of the great things about some of the new technologies, it can translate to and from the various different languages. So even if you've had although I will quote, when it's, say if it's an audio file, if it's in nice, clear English, spoken American English or spoken English, the transcription is fine. But when you go to Australian English, and especially we're talking about historical stuff, the quality drops down really, really quickly. And I know Lee will probably know a lot about, modern, so when we use Google and whatnot now, we've got really good microphones and it's trained on our modern diction. But if we look at historical things, low quality audio files, and they don't have much of that historical accents. So it's really, really hard for the older files. So that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you. Lee, do you have any comments, particularly around discoverability? How can people find these things?
Discoverability is always an issue with, I suppose, audio files, and that's one of the things. I think the technology is actually finally catching up to that in terms of, being able to turn that audio into text, because ultimately, even what we do at its core is just sort of dealing with text after audio has been converted to some form of text, which then that in turn obviously makes it indexable, makes it searchable. And I know there's a lot of companies, and there's one out of Melbourne as well, that's sort of really producing some cutting edge stuff in that space. But until we get over that technological hurdle of actually making that stuff easily indexable, that makes it sort of, as soon as we solve that problem, then everything is searchable. So, I think that's still a work in progress, and it's one of those areas that we're sort of constantly focused on, because the easier it is to search volumes and volumes of audio, the easier it is to actually present an experience to somebody for the content that they're actually.
Good. Thank you for those comments. We've got a question. Do you consider the listen to option in the Google Translator a good resource to help inclusion? We've currently got a student with a visual disability with a different background. Our library offers few resources where she can listen even in her own home, language, but is limited to Google's compatibility. Are there other resources that you think are particularly valuable in this sort of environment? And I should say that also within universities, lots of us are using the Echo 365 automatic translator. And Justin has already, a lot of the things that you've both talked about, the limitations, given that we have diverse groups of lecturers, we see on a large scale. So comments about Google Translator or any other automated translators that you think are really helpful for our community to know about?
I'll only say one thing quickly to say that any translation is better than none, though Lee's probably an expert about which one is best, but anything is better than nothing. So if it's not translated at all, then it's totally inaccessible to those type of users.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. And I mean, we actually got our start in, of all things, of accessibility and building websites or turning websites into something that the low, no vision community could actually have a conversation with. But unfortunately, I think a lot of organizations will tick the accessibility box and do as little as possible. And I think we don't have much experience with Google Translate. We're now starting to move into being able to produce voice experiences in different languages. And ultimately, we'll turn all of this content into something that somebody can have a conversation with. So that improves accessibility. But I think the big lesson for us has always been that unless an organization is willing to spend the time and the effort, and unfortunately, to a certain extent, that includes the money, unless they're willing to do that, then it's often left to the end user to actually sort things out for themselves. Which is, that gets to an issue of equality of access and that sort of thing. So one of our social mission and our core mission is to be able to convince organizations that they can make accessibility easy and functional. And that's one of the things that we talk about every day. But yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, unfortunately.
That's lovely. Thank you. I guess the other thing I was going to ask you too was whether you thought that the COVID-19 situation had really meant that people were actually seeing the opportunities for this sort of engagement because people couldn't physically go into schools, universities, workplaces, libraries, because we'd love to see more. So what's the change? What's COVID-19 meant for you guys?
I'll go quickly and say I look at a lot of the usage data at State Library Victoria, and as soon as that pandemic hit, digital object usage went off the roof. It was doubled overnight. And again, that brings, we love it, it's fantastic, and we see it more on social media as well. But again, we always think about the other type of communities. Our accessibility and core communities is what we care about. But that's one of the biggest things is huge use straight away.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, for us, as bad as this is to say, COVID-19 is actually sort of, it opened everybody's eyes to what was possible and sort of forced them to look at different types of solutions. So it's actually been, I think we're one of the few industries that actually benefit as a result of sort of what is obviously a very unpleasant, devastating situation to a lot of people and a lot of businesses. But the other thing that I'd say is sort of what this has made people recognize is there's all of this content out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be housed in one location. So I know the project that we've spoken about with the State Library of Queensland, they're an organisation that's effectively based in Brisbane, which sure is where the majority of Queenslanders do live, but it's making all of this content and information and data and media available outside of that core location. So I think that's what sort of, the State Library is on a constant digital transformation process, but that's what sort of COVID has highlighted there as well, is that there's the ability to be able to take all of this amazing content and deliver it to where people are, not necessarily requiring people to come to you.
That's terrific. There's another question. I think I should say my background is from our Zhu Dishan collection. We've just digitized the whole of the Zhu Dishan collection, which is Chinese works going back to 1411 from one of the great Chinese philosophers. And of course, there's lots of as with Australian Indigenous languages, lots of words where the transcription, so transcribers doesn't work at all on Chinese in our experience, and there's lots of challenges. But I really liked your comment that take what you can, convert what you can now. And I always remember a Google presentation I went to about 12 years ago where they said, do what you can because middleware is going to solve everything in the long run because you've just got to get out there. Is there anything else you think is really important for us to think about as we start our digital journeys about how to be satisfied and adventurous and not wait for the perfect?
Cool. I'll just say one thing very quickly. It is the field changes so quickly. What's possible now will not possible now will be possible next month or even next year. So, if you can't do Chinese today, I know Google and Azure can do Chinese. You're going to wake up next year, and it's going to be totally possible. So its expectations will change very quickly.
Good comment, Justin. Lee?
I'd agree with that entirely. Like technology can both be our friend and our foe, but I think in this instance, it's just a matter of time before these, there are already people working on solving these problems, and it's just a matter of time before they reach sort of mass adoption. So we're living in a golden age, and it's great to be a part of it.
That is fantastic. Oh, and I've got to say, you both represent the opportunities that we don't have to solve everything at a large scale. We learn by doing, by sharing, partnering, and thank you. That's been really, really inspiring. So now we're going to have a short break while group 2 join us, and then we will start again in about 3 minutes with our next session. So thank you, Lee. Thank you, Justin. It's been a real privilege to be with you today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.